I'm gonna tell you a secret that not many people know. It's weird calling it a secret, I think, because I've known it for pretty much my whole life, but it's not something that I often tell people. So I'm just gonna say it. I wanna be an artist. I wanna be an artist. And the funny thing about it is, over the course of the last few days, I kind of realized that I am actually, in fact, already an artist. Just maybe not a good, a good one. Um, because being an artist is a state of being. So I think this is a bit difficult to understand without context. So I'm gonna give some. But first, I think I wanna talk about what an artist is. I think the common definition that we often have of artists is someone who makes a living of art, I suppose. Um, at least I think the one that I have is that way, and I think to me it's somebody who is, seeing some sort of external acknowledgement of their art, be it like being able to sell, say, their paintings or being able to make a living off of it. I have an aunt who's a art teacher who paints. Um, she studied art in university in Taiwan in a time where it was not very common for people to. Well, let's just put it that way. Besides my aunt, a lot of my own mom, who's slightly younger than my aunt, who went to art school, did not go to university. So the fact that my aunt went to university and went to an art university at that, I mean, granted it was a scholarship, but like, I think from young, to me, the idea of an artist has always been sort of, at the start at least, anchored around the idea of like what my aunt does. My aunt is also the only unmarried sibling out of all the 8 uh, children on my mom's side, of which my mom is one of them. So she has always been a bit unique in that way. And I think I can't talk about wanting to be an artist without mentioning her, I suppose. So, um, so when I was young, I think one of the memories that I have is being in my aunt's house. Um, this is one of the earlier houses that she had. She moved a few times. So in her flat, sitting on the floor with a piece of A3 drawing board, A3 drawing paper, painting with like a kid's set of watercolor paints, making a mess, but it was okay to do it at her house because she didn't mind it the way that my mom would. Um, she wasn't very fast about whether we laid newspaper on the floor before we started painting, because sometimes we would paint out of the edges. We being me and my sister, my younger sister. My sister never. I mean, she painted a bit, but she never really quite took to it the same way I did. And by took to it, I just meant like I just wanted to keep painting. It's not always good. In fact, I mean, it's a kid's drawing. Like, it's not great. Yeah, but I remember that feeling of freedom. I don't know why my voice is choking up. But I remember the feeling of freedom. Being able to paint that way at her house. This is strangely emotional. I wasn't expecting that. Wow. Okay. This is a lot more emotional than I thought it would be. Well, I guess I never really told anybody about this before. I don't usually edit my videos, but I might just cut that crying jig out of it. I don't know, we'll see. But it's kind of weird. I thought I could just make this video. But I guess a lot of it is not processed. Not as processed as some of the other stuff that I've said on this channel. Anyway, back to art. So I think that image I have sitting on the floor, painting, that's been something that I've returned to that memory of me sitting on the floor painting. That's been something that a memory that I've returned to a lot, especially when I think about what I want my life to be like. Like, I went through a period of looking through a lot of self-help books. The fact that I even took a year off, the fact that I even took a year off to not work, my first fun employment year, or my adult gap year as I called it, a lot of it came from the idea that, like, I did everything that I was told would be good for me, you know, the Singapore dream, the Singapore life. Work hard, or rather study hard first. Study hard, work hard, and then, you know, you will have a good life. But I did that, and I studied hard. I got a scholarship, I got a job, I fulfilled my bond for the scholarship. And I felt so deeply unfulfilled. Like, I think it's more startling for the fact that it feels like nothing than the fact that it feels like something. I felt nothing much about what I've achieved, only a kind of feeling that I should feel glad for whatever I've achieved, that I earned enough money, that I had a decent savings, that I, was working a stable job. But I felt really empty inside. And so turning to self-help books, I think, and also, internet videos, a lot of which were like, think about what you wanted to do as a child, think about your dream as a child before, all the adult life things came in and kind of sidetracked you. What did you want to be before society told you that you couldn't be what you want to be? And I returned to that memory of me on the floor painting whenever I think about this question. And so since my first fun employment year, I've known that I wanted to be an artist. I think I've always known, even as a child. But it just wasn't something that I think I felt like I was allowed to do. There's a lot of reasons, but I think they can generally overarchingly be summed up to like, why choose an unstable route when you know if you just study hard and work hard, you can have a stable job and a steady income? Isn't the safe way better? I think that's kind of the gist of it. And that's what I did. I did it for quite a while, and now I'm technically on my third fun employment period. 2 months in, and I finally have the courage to say, I want to be an artist. Like, I genuinely would rather just like not cry on camera, but I feel like it's also disingenuous to pretend like this is not affecting me, so it might also be that the sun is a bit bright, so I'm just gonna not look at the camera in that direction. Maybe it'll help. So I think this is the first time I've dared to say aloud that I want to be an artist. But I think I've always taken actions that push as far as I dared to at any moment in time towards being an artist. And I've taken a bunch of actions actually that are in my head what I would call art adjacent things. So for most of my school years, up to junior college, which was when I was 18, I did science. I studied science. I was a math and science student. But In secondary 3, which was when I was 15, well, technically it would be sec 2 because I would be picking my subjects for sec 3 back then. So I picked higher art because that was the only art course available in my school. We didn't have regular art because once you are not in a neighborhood school, sometimes they don't give you the option of actually doing art. You have to study the rest of the theory and history that comes with art before you can paint it. I don't know, I feel like there's classism and some economic status thing in that, but I'm not gonna dig into it today. So I wanted to take higher art. The first lesson I went, the teacher told me, "Hi, I'm just a relief teacher. Your actual teacher is pregnant and she'll be away for pretty much the whole of this year that you're supposed to be studying for this. And so I will instead tell you that you will have to do your self-directed study of art history, of which I will not give you an outline. And now let's introduce yourself and tell me why you want to study art." Like, I don't know, maybe that was just a spectacularly bad relief teacher. But imagine trying to take a subject in art and then like learning that your actual instructor is going to be away for like 75% of the year, and your relief teacher being like, "Yes, it's a subject, but you're going to study it by yourself anyway." Yeah, I didn't continue taking higher art, but also because I thought I would get to paint or like draw or whatever, like actually work with my hands. I didn't think that it would be so much theory and history, which I was not really interested in. I just want to paint or draw or whatever, put something down on paper. So that was one. And then when I finished junior college at 18, we were choosing majors for our university. So, I mean, given my results, there was no doubt that I was going to go to university. And it was something that, is part of the life path mapped out for me before then. Study hard, go to university, work hard, get a good job. So, I think the tiny, tiny bit of rebellion that I had in it, although I don't know if it can be called that, is instead of studying what I already studied, which was math, science, econs, I chose architecture. And I chose architecture for a rather silly reason, actually. So at that point in time, I actually don't know much about architecture. Don't really know much about buildings. Never really consumed architecture content, magazines, like going to look at actual buildings or reading about buildings or looking at drawings of buildings or anything like that. I've always been more interested in people. At that point in time, I think my art was mainly a lot of pencil and pen on paper, a lot of manga style drawings because I read a lot of manga at that point in time. And consumption versus output will come in maybe a bit later or in another video, but that's also something that I've been thinking about. Anyway, so a tiny bit of rebellion, taking architecture instead of, science or engineering or math or econs or, I don't know, accountancy. I chose it because when I went to the architecture school open house, a senior was showing me that they were making models, and I was like, I want to do that. I can do that. What I did not know at that point in time was that I would have to then, learn about building spaces, design that thing that I was going to build. I just wanted to build the thing. I didn't really think so hard about the rest of it. A little naive maybe, but I think it was as close as I could get to art without outright saying that I wanna be an artist. Also because at that point in time I was like, I already felt like I've taken a step back in choosing to not do higher art. And like if I suddenly said I wanted to go to art college or whatever, whether I will, not like it. Because if they were trying to stuff theory and history down my throat at 15, like I'm sure they will do more of that later on, right? And then I was really scared of there being a very wide gap in terms of skill, which there probably is even now. And then I did architecture school. I finished architecture school. I worked in building for a while. And then I took a fun employment year because I needed to. I realized my life was not going in the direction I wanted. But I didn't know how to articulate that. And the only thing I could do was hit pause on it. So in my fun employment year, which I think I don't really talk about, even when I go for job interviews, I mostly just say I made videos during that fun employment year, but really what I did is I spent 1 year trying to become a professional face-up artist. And technically I was sort of a professional face-up artist in the sense that like I did get sent ball jointed doll heads to paint and I got paid for doing that, but I wasn't being paid enough, or like I wasn't doing enough work or doing it fast enough to earn a livable wage. So it was, I don't regret doing it. I think it taught me a lot about myself and what my art is. But in practical terms, I don't think I can do that as a full-time job. There are people who are full-time face-up artists, and I really admire them. I don't think I will be one of them. But I spent most of that 1 year trying to do that, grappling with it. And alongside that, I made doll videos, which, if you don't know, is actually my main channel, if that makes sense. But at job interviews, when they asked me what I did during the gap year, I said I just took time off to think about stuff, and then sometimes I made videos. And then after that, when I realized that I don't think I can actually be a full-time face-up artist, and I don't actually really want to be, like I enjoy doing the face-ups, but not when I was forced to kind of do it at a certain pace. Do it at a faster pace than I would like. I turned to coffee. And I did it in the same naive way that I chose architecture, which is, I was like, it would be fun to learn about latte art, right? Why not? And like, I'm not judging the way I've made my choices. I think there is a reason for why I do it the way I do. But and the short of it is, I think it's actually my intuition, but I don't recognize it at a point in time. And that's why it always seems unexplainable from the outside, because it's not logical. But I think I chose coffee because it was like a applied art kind of thing. Or like craft, I suppose. And framing it this way makes it easier to see how, I guess I've always been reaching for art. At a lot of the critical turning points in my life, I've not gotten to a point, at least up to this point when I'm making this video, I hadn't gotten to a point where I dared to say what I actually want, which is to be an artist. But I've been reaching for it many more times than I think my conscious mind is aware of. I think and for good reason, because I think if my conscious mind is aware of it, it will not let me do this. Because my conscious mind has been programmed and conditioned by society to be like, take the safe path, take the path where if you study hard and work hard, you will have a safe and stable job. And if that's the thing for you, there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't what I wanted. And so I'm gonna skip a bit ahead because I think that's probably enough context. There's more to it, but I think that's enough context to know. So this being my third fun employment period, I think what not working has afforded me is time to think and reflect about my life. And I think the repetition of, this being the third time, and the fact that I grappled with it the first time. The second time, what I started was this YouTube channel. And then the third time, I think started with a lot of thoughts about, like, what does it really mean when I say I want to be an artist? Like, can I actually allow myself to pursue it? And you can tell even now, I find it very hard to say it because I think the conditioning and the things that I've been told growing up, the stuff that I've taken on from social, cultural norms is just that it's not possible to do it, or I can only do it if I'm a certain way as an artist. Which is like, for example, what my aunt was, like an art teacher, or somebody who went to art school, somebody who paints, or somebody who takes photographs, of which, by the way, these are all things that my aunt does. And I didn't do any of these things. Not quite the same way. So I didn't feel like I was an artist. And I've been grappling with that, in my own way, in my own various ways over the years. So the start of this fun employment period, I went on a trip to Jeju and Seoul with two of my friends. And the part of it that's related to this, I went to visit two different art exhibitions. One is a ball joint doll and Hongdae University, Hong-Ik University fashion graduate students clothes. So it's like there were dolls. So there were dolls with like sort of conventional. By conventional I just mean like the way we would style them in the hobby. Soom does a particular style, but like seeing the dolls being plain and then the clothes done by the Hongdae graduates, students, being the star of another section of the exhibition, made me realize that, like, what I think of as just a hobby, painting dolls, owning dolls, collecting dolls, doing crafts around things that the dolls would wear, what I think of as a hobby is in fact actually some form of art. And it's really stupid, but I really realized this when I was looking at like the dolls that Soom has displayed regularly. And then at the bottom of the plug, I'll put some image when I edit. But like at the bottom there was a plug that said like mixed media, and then there were things like attributing the wig to a maker, the face up to a maker, the clothes to another maker, the eyes to a different maker, and things like that. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I guess you can see dolls as mixed media art, because there is a sculpture of the doll face, you paint on the doll, you make clothes for the doll, you kind of style hair for the doll, you can make hair for the doll, you can make eyes, you can do a lot of things really. But like, as somebody who's been a doll owner for so long, in a way of seeing it as a hobby, that like I've never really thought about it as art until I saw that plug. And I think the thing that drove it home was looking at the fashion side of things, because I think it's very clear that there was like fashion that you see from fashion students, or stuff that you might see down a runway, and seeing that on the dolls made me realize, oh, the dolls themselves are art, but the things that go on the dolls is also art. So that was one. The second art exhibition I went to was I just randomly picked one. I just searched art exhibition in Seoul on one of the days, and I think I searched art space, and then I picked a building that looked nice, because I figured if the exhibition was something that didn't suit my taste, at least I can look at the building, because the building doesn't change, but art exhibit might change, right, based on whatever is shown online. So I went to one. I think it's called Space K. And I took no photos of the artwork inside the exhibition, which I kind of regret a little bit, but also not really. I regret a little bit because I can't really show you what the art looks like, but then I think the photos will not be sufficient, because it's not the kind of art that looks very good when you take a whole photo of it, just because it's so big. It's like a huge horizontal scroll of canvas with many, many, many people with a lot of hatched graphite details. And like, it's something that is interesting to like walk close and like stare at it in bits and pieces. But I think when you try and take a photo of it, it doesn't quite capture the same energy. So that art exhibit, I think, strangely impacted me more than I want to admit, I think. I'm not gonna say too much about that, but it impacted me enough that I decided to take the pamphlet that I was given and use it to wrap around a new blank notebook. Blank as in the pages are blank, they're not lined. And that was the thing that I did when I came home from Korea. Like the Soom exhibition, and then this Space K exhibition by artist, I forgot his name, sorry, but like I'll link to a video. He talks about his stuff in that video. It inspired me enough to take a blank notebook and start daily drawing again, which is kind of like what led to this whole thought about like daring to say I want to be an artist, because I think I've always known that, I just didn't dare to say it. Anyway, I've been doing that daily art pages for almost a month now, and I do it the same way I do morning pages, the way Julia Cameron from The Artist Way suggests, which is, well, for morning pages she suggests that you just write 3 pages of whatever comes to your mind, just like write it down, get it out, and then after that you can have a clearer frame of mind to start your day, do your art. You're not like thinking about all these other things that kind of have your attention and make it hard for you to get into flow. The way I've done my daily art page is kind of like the most basic of it is just one page. That's it. Like I just have to do something on that one page. Doesn't matter what media, doesn't matter how complete, doesn't matter if it looks nice or not. It can be about mundane stuff, it can be about whatever I needed to do in that moment, it can be about whatever I was feeling in that moment. It can be anything as long as the page is filled. So I'm quite proud of myself for doing that actually. But it's also quite embarrassing to admit. So I've been thinking, like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do with my life? And that small part of my voice that's always been like, you want to be an artist is, really small and tiny. And it's been trying to scream at the top of its lungs for like forever. But it's always been kind of quietened down by social conditionings and everything else. And like, I came across a video just a few days ago that made me realize an artist is just someone who can't help but create, like can't help but need to create, want to create. Like if you have an urge to make something, a kind of like restlessness that won't leave you until you do the thing, write something, draw something, make a video of something, I don't know. If you have that, you already are an artist, is basically the takeaway from the first part of that video. And listening to that video, I cried. There's a lot of crying involved in this, I suppose, which means I guess it's very important to me. And then that's when I realized I've always been an artist. I already am an artist. I think the thing that got conflated is expectations and whether I'm a good one, whether I'm a good artist. So the second part of that video talks about how a good artist, like you already are an artist if you have this urge, because not everybody has this urge, which is something that I've sort of known, but I've never really put it together to be like, right, so that makes me an artist. But the second part of the video goes into how you kind of have to be obsessed to be a great artist. You kind of have to be obsessed enough to want to voluntarily spend your time creating things, not because you're obliged to, but because you actually want to. Or you've made a decision to, rather, a choice to. And it is that choice to keep showing up that makes you become a great artist and not just an artist, because you already are an artist. And that's the part that I don't know where I stand on in terms of that yet. Maybe I won't be a great artist. And if that's the case, I guess I will just have to figure out how to make peace with it. But like, I think realizing that I'm already an artist, when the whole time I've had my voice in my head going, I want to be an artist, I want to be an artist, I want to be an artist. But I already am one, Like, I don't need to be one, I already am one right now, in this moment, at all the moments in time before this. And realizing that, we're not going to talk about the being a good artist portion of it, because I haven't unpacked that at all, and this video is surely already long enough. But realizing that I already am an artist puts a lot of things into context, I guess. Things like why that memory of me drawing on the floor was so important. remembering that even before I picked up a sketchbook in primary 3, I went home every day. The thing that I wanted to do the most was to make something. And at that point in time, I made a lot of cardboard boxes. I don't know why. My dad taught me how to make a 3D box, like a cube, by drawing like a rectangle. I think in math is called a net. Anyway, so I would draw like 4 squares down, 2 squares to the side, and then I'll fold it up to make a cube. And I made lots and lots of cubes, and I tried to make a like robot humanoid figure out of just cubes, with a lot of sticky tape that didn't hold together very well. And I was just doing that every day after class. That was what I looked forward to the most. And then later on, when my then best friend introduced me to sketchbooks and drawing in sketchbooks, I drew a page every day. I finished drawing, inking, coloring one every day because it was fun. And it was not particularly great drawings, but I drew every day, and so there was improvement because I did it every day. And I always wanted to go home to do it. I didn't want to do my homework, but I knew I had to, so I would do my homework in class while class was happening so that I could go home to draw. And like there was always this need to create. When I started the doll hobby at 16, before I started the doll hobby at 16, I drew a lot of manga style drawings. And then I drew my dolls, the dolls that I wanted to buy. And then when I actually had my dolls, I did a lot of face-ups, I made jewelry, I sewed doll clothes. I felt spectacularly blocked in doing my art when I was in architecture school because we had a technical drawing component to our first studio module that was so boring and so dry and so different from what I usually draw that I felt like in order to draw like that, I had to fit a certain mold, and in doing that, I kind of didn't want to pick up a pen and draw again. And I sort of didn't. Until now, even now it's quite sporadic. I no longer draw as much as I used to back in like secondary school and primary school. When I drew like at least one page every day, doesn't really happen nowadays. Hasn't happened for like pretty much a decade really. But also like, even when I was working and not realizing I was kind of depressed and unfulfilled, when my colleague found out I drew and he also draws, he suggested we have weekly drawing sessions. So we bring our sketchbooks, our pens and markers and whatnot, and then we will sit down one day every week after dinner. After work, we'll go out for dinner and then we will draw. Like, now I see all of this as signs that I've always needed to create. Oh, I forgot. In university, when I was writing my dissertation, I hated it so much. Well, I don't know whether I hate it, but it was very painful. So I turned to writing fan fiction. I wrote, I think, more words in fan fiction than I did for my dissertation. I think what I'm trying to say is like realizing that I have, in fact, always been an artist. It's kind of like a very duh realization in hindsight, given everything else I've told you. But like, it also kind of shows you how strong the block is in terms of like social conditioning, making me feel like I can't be an artist despite all of this, and feeling like I can only keep it as a wish of I want to be an artist. Yeah, I don't know. That's been one of the things that I've really been grappling with lately, becoming an artist or being an artist or whatever you want to call it. Okay, like, okay, I'm gonna end this video here now. I've talked for long enough. Thank you for listening to me. See you next time. Bye. The video was already very long, but I realized I forgot to say something. So besides the fact that I may never be a great artist, I think the other thing that's made it a bit confusing about the fact that I not just want to be an artist, but I really am an artist, is the fact that my art doesn't have a specific medium. Like, I don't have the thing where I don't have the experience where some people, when you see some artists, when you see them talk about in interviews, they're like, oh, I've always been drawn to, let's say, oil paints as a kid, or I've always been drawn to wool, or I've always been drawn to knitting, I've always been drawn to I don't know, music, whatever it is, right? Like, I've never felt super strongly about any medium in particular, and so I think I've always felt a bit like an imposter and a fraud in that sense of like, if this is meant to be my thing, then why do I not have a specific medium? Anyway, the answer for that is I think at least the answer that makes sense right now, it may change later, and it's gonna sound horrendously stupid, is if you think of art as, let's say, like an art medium as, say, there is an instrument and then there is a thing in which the art is shown on, displayed on, embodied, whatever, performed, showcased, I think. So if you think of art as having a particular instrument of making that art and then another thing in which it is showcased, so like for example, a paintbrush is the instrument of making a painting, and then the thing that is showcased on is a canvas in which the art itself is finally showcased on, and then the medium we would call painting, I guess. I think my medium is life, and by that I mean the instrument of my art is my physical body, my physical, like, this is the tool that I'm supposed to figure out how to use, like knowing myself, my body, my preferences, who I am. This is the body, this is the instrument that I'm supposed to use to make art, and the art, the thing that my art is, the thing that it is showcased on, is my life. And it sounds really stupid and pretentious, I guess, but whatever, it's the answer that I have at the moment. May not be the answer, may not be the final answer, but you know what, whatever, it's fine.